So what if I'm the monster lurking deep below? So what if I'm the monster? It's a good song. It's a really good song, and I think it's honestly what I am dealing with over and over again throughout the course of my life. Especially, I mean, it's always been there, but it's become especially apparent as of late. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. I'm not going to provide a lot of exposition. I just want to get into the essence of it. When I have panic attacks, what that is for me is anxiety plus depersonalization, derealization. Look it up. It's a thing. So that's what it is. And I call it panic. And when I'm feeling panicked, I notice something that it's not always the case, but 80% of the time or more, it is accompanied by thoughts about morality, thoughts about doing the right thing, thoughts about being a good person and what that means. I once had a panic attack, an actual literal panic attack over whether or not to recycle a soup can because I felt like I didn't know what the right action was. I didn't know if recycling it was going to help do anything good for the world or not. And it was dirty still, and I didn't want to put in the effort to clean it because it was really stuck on their stuff, and I didn't know how clean it needed to be. And I just started freaking out about this trivial thing that doesn't matter because there's no amount that I can recycle that can offset the level of environmental damage that is done by industry, for example. I'm just one person. But it didn't matter about those facts. What mattered is that I beat myself up over it until I had a panic attack and I didn't know what to do. The other thing that had happened that I have thought about in relation to panic that I think is important to say is that there would be times where I would imagine scenarios like somebody breaking into my house and trying to hurt me or people that I love, or just scenarios like that. And the panicked version of me, the paranoid, panicked version of me that's obsessed with doing no harm, with not causing harm to anything, would not be able to do what is necessary to stop that threat. And he would be paralyzed probably by indecision and paralysis of the mind, and he wouldn't make a choice, or he wouldn't make a decision, or maybe he'd act too late if he finally made up his mind. He'd just sit there being like, well, I don't want to harm anything, and like the guy that's coming into my house to murder me and my family is just, he's got his own agenda. Who are we to say that he is wrong? Who are we to choose and pick a side? And like the thing is, like, I'm right. That part of me is right. Technically, there is no right and wrong out there in the world. They are not global variables. They are not things that are just out there and we have to figure them out. And you could choose to see the world as there is no right, there is no wrong, but everybody's equal in their opinion. You could choose to see it that way, and that's still a choice. And that choice is motivated by the desire to be harmless. So, anyway, I don't like that version of myself that would allow anything to happen, would allow harm to come to people that I love. Because all of the other versions of me, despite their varying degrees of willing to harm others, all of the other versions of me would stop that threat real fast. And there are some versions of me that would light him up beyond what is necessary, and they would be fine doing that. But the panicked, paranoid version of me might not. He might do nothing. Nothing but sit in terror. But is it the terror of the threat? Or is the terror of his own actions? So this is all kind of important background. But now I want to talk about something that I've noticed. When I would feel panicky, there were some times where I would be able to get it to stop. And it was weird the way that I was able to get it to stop. So there's two paths. When it was mostly the thoughts, the panicky thoughts, I was able to do the second path. And when it was mostly the feelings, I could try the first path. But the second path was way more successful than anything. The first path, I just want to include it for myself for future reference, is that sometimes I was able to focus in on my body, on my gut, specifically feeling what it's like to have pressure in the lower part of my abdomen or like weight, feeling grounded to the earth in some way. And when I would do that, I would feel better. And the second path is a very odd thing that I would do. But what it was me acknowledging that I am not a saint. I'm not a goody two shoes. I have evil in me. Straight up. Not just like, oh, I can defend myself. It's like, no, I even have evil malice inside of me. That is a part of who I am. And there are things that I want that are not super kind or super nice. And there are feelings that I have that are perhaps shameful. There are feelings of aggression I have, feelings of wanting to take violence against others. I don't act on these feelings, but they exist inside of me, and they are a part of me. And when I would realize that, I would just say to myself, like, I'm not a good person, I would start to feel better. And it wasn't like a shaming myself, saying like, I'm not a good person, oh no. It was just telling myself like, hey, I am not this scared, feckless, meek, small, harmless creature. I'm really not. I I have darkness in my own heart. I feel like Vigar, the mage from League of Legends, been like, I have darkness in my heart. It's like, I am evil. But I am. I am. I mean, probably not a lot more evil than anyone else. Not really. Maybe a little bit, actually. I'm not sure. But what I know is that I have this. I'm just not a great. I'm not a good person. Okay. I'm not. Not in the sense of I don't always follow the rules. I don't always really care about right and wrong as other people care about them. Sometimes I don't give a shit about other people's feelings. But that's just the way it is. That's who I really am deep down. It's just I'm not a good person, quote. Doesn't mean I'm a bad person specifically, but it means I'm not a goody two shoes. I'm not a saint. And acknowledging that, just that's my character. It just instantly makes me feel better. I don't feel panicked at all. I feel instead like, yeah, I'm not, and I'm okay with it. I'm okay that there's going to be pain and suffering, and that there's things that I want that other people don't want, and we're going to come to conflict over it. Like, I'm okay with all of that because that's just life. It's being afraid, being so paralyzingly feared over this stuff is not the actual self. It's something else going on. It's a layer of abstraction outside of my inherent default feeling. And I picked up a book. It picked me up. Um, I found it at a bookstore. It was the first book I saw on the shelf that drew my attention. And it's called Notes to Myself, My Struggle to Become a Person. And in it, the author has lots of different notes about life, and not all of them stand all the time or anything, but it just felt like something I would write to myself. And one of them was really helpful. And in it, I'm going to paraphrase here, but what he said is that when he is experiencing indecision or confusion, which for me are ubiquitous when I'm with being panicked, when he experiences that, he says most of the time he finds that what that is the difference between how he really feels and how he thinks he should feel. And how you really feel is how you really feel. And it's so very important. And sometimes I forget to be a person. I forget to recognize that I am Kiefer and that I have these feelings about things. I have these desires, these wants, and these aversions, and this sense of self, and this story that I want to live out. And that my story matters to me. And that I'm only ever going to be me. And that I have my people in my life, my friends and my family and my cat. And that I want to protect and cherish those people because they're my people. There are countless other people out there that, yeah, I could be friends with. I could see their point of view. I could support them instead. But if there comes a conflict and I don't choose my people or myself because I want to look good, because I want to think well of myself, or that I am harmless, that I will never do harm to anybody, or that I need to be factual, that I need to be objective about who was right and who was wrong, and I don't know how to do that, so I need to sit here and spin my wheels calculating that endlessly, running into a runtime error. Well, it doesn't work, does it? The song that I was singing in the beginning is from the Epic the Musical, where in it, Odysseus is talking about literal monsters, how he let them live, how he spared them, how he gave them mercy. And when he did that, it came back to bite him, and he lost his entire crew, 600 men, because of this hubris, because he wanted to be a good person. He wanted to do the right thing. It's not that he trusted himself to do the right thing in his gut, but it's that he wanted to look good. He wanted to be merciful. And he didn't realize that being harmless and giving mercy could lead to a disastrous outcome. But it really can. One of the laws of war, I think, in the Robert Greene book is you need to crush your enemy totally and completely. And obviously there's a time and a place for not doing that and strategic retreats and things like that, but inherently what that means is similar to Ender's Game, where Ender talks about how his goal is basically to kill his enemy, or at the very least destroy them so completely that they can never harm him again. And it's very important to do that when you're fighting a war or doing something serious, because, yeah, if you're too merciful to somebody or some group or something or a monster, they may take revenge on you later for you spared their life and they're going to try to get you. And so Odysseus sings about the need to become the monster. That in order to make it back home on this journey, he is going to have to become the monster. The monster to everybody that's not his friend, everybody that's not his family or himself. He is going to have to become the monster to them. And so for so long, I was trying to figure out what was right and wrong. I was trying to talk to myself and other people out loud, um, trying to write a lot, trying to journal a ton about figuring out in a situation who is right, who is wrong, what's the right answer. And there isn't one, right? There isn't one. And it's incredibly freeing when you really see that. But I think that seeing that there isn't a right answer and deciding to become the monster when it's necessary to protect those that you love, it's not really about seeing the truth of the world because everything is always perspective. It's not about seeing that. Maybe it can help to realize that there's no objective morality, but you can always be gripped by that feeling in you of wanting to please other people, wanting to be harmless. But it's a decision. It's something you decide. Odysseus decided to become the monster so that he would make it back home again. And in the same way, I am deciding and will have to continue to decide every day to become the monster so that I might get home again, so that I might live. I need to be willing to be a monster so that I can live my own life, so that I can act in my own best interest and the interests of those who I protect. There's no other way about it. You are you. So even if you deny this and you deny how you feel and you want to put other people, you want to choose people who you don't know or that aren't loyal to you or that you don't trust because you feel like it's the right thing to do, because you don't want to trust yourself, because you don't want to value your own inner nature or value who you are as a person. You will pay the price for it. You will pay the price in some way or another. It will bubble up to the surface that what you're doing is wrong. You're refusing to be you. In the same way, when two countries are at war and their soldiers are running over the trenches, getting gunned down to protect their homes, neither side is really wrong. I think perhaps the fat rich people orchestrating the war are wrong. And that's another topic for another day. Something's got to be done about that. We shouldn't be having wars in the 21st century. But the man who is fighting to protect his country and the people he loves isn't wrong. So on either side of the battlefield, neither one is wrong. This culture, that culture, this race, that race, this team, that team, this country, that country, they're not wrong. Neither one is wrong for what they're doing. In fact, I could argue that they're both right. They're both right to choose their own thing. It is right that they should oppose each other and that they should protect their own people from them. And it's sad. It's that they're kind of forced into this. They're forced into a situation where they are doing battle with one another by their own natures. But they don't get to not play. Because if you say, okay, I'm not going to play this game, what are you really saying? You're saying, I'm going to lie down and I'm going to let them charge our trenches and I'm going to let myself get run through. Or if I don't get run through and I'm lucky, I'm going to let people back at home be subject to their rule and what they want and potentially to die or suffer serious harm. So you don't get to weasel your way out of a choice. You don't get to say, oh, I'm not playing the game. Just like when people say, oh, I don't ever participate in drama or I don't participate in conflict. It's like, you have to. You're all in this game of life, and you're going to participate in the conflict, and you can handle it how you see fit. And sometimes we can all agree, at least most of us can agree, that you're handling it better. But there are times where people aren't going to agree with you, where you're going to be opposed. And you can decide whether you want to stay true to yourself and what you really feel, or whether you want to abdicate to your own doubt. For many years, on and off, I really didn't understand that I might have a true self or a truer self. I didn't understand that I had default feelings about something. I thought that I just had no feelings about the matter, and that I just felt the side of everyone on any decision, any issue, that I could see all sides of it. And therefore, because I was so wise, or whatever the hell I thought, that I was paralyzed into inaction. But reading that book, Notes to Myself, when he talks about confusion or indecision, meaning that there's a difference between what you feel and how you think you should feel, it made me realize that I do have default feelings that are pretty entrenched, and that they do comprise who I am. And maybe not always is it right to listen to them in the sense of I should take action on them, but it is right that I should have these feelings, as Alan Watts would say. And there's no wrong feeling to have, and they are mine. And so what I've realized is that this cacophony in my head is largely the dissonance caused by feeling that I should feel a certain way and how I actually feel, and those two things not aligning. And there's a lot of situations in which those things don't align. They can be mild things, like I have a default view of some issue, some political issue or a viewpoint. And then people around me or on the internet will say, oh, this is terrible. And in the modern narrative, I'm supposed to condemn something that I don't really feel like condemning. Or I'm supposed to cancel somebody who I don't really feel like deserves to be canceled. And if I were to speak up against that, I could become canceled. I could be considered terrible, you know. And so that's a pretty ugly thing, but that's reality in our modern world. And this goes on both sides of the political fence. I don't think that one, like, I'm not trying to be unbiased again, believe me, but I do believe that they both have their problems. I hardly even care about the exact sides at all. It doesn't really matter to me. Which is another thing that somebody else might get mad at me for, saying, how dare you not pick a side? And it's like, well, I'm going to pick my own side. I'll do that, at least for once. I'll do that. But you might not like it. You might not like what I have to say at all. So, I have my own feelings. They're the only way that I can live is by having them. But sometimes my own feelings are nasty. Sometimes I feel immense rage towards somebody, and other times my real feelings are apathetic. That, like, I really don't care if they're around or not. And that those feelings seem ugly to me. There's a version of me that I would like to become that has more values, that is responsible, that does good. And it's very hard to become him when I don't really know exactly what good is, when I don't know what that would entail. But I do know that there are things I want. I do know that if I get rid of the language of good and bad and I just let myself exist. I'm not that horrible of a person. Like, I'm not going to get myself into such trouble that I need to seriously reconsider the fabric of my existence, you know? I think there are people like that, that their natural inclination is just incredibly destructive, but mine aren't that destructive. They're just self serving. And like I said, not every single feeling. Like if I feel intense anger and I want to go punch somebody, I'm not going to do that, most likely. Um, but that feeling is my feeling, you know, and I should honor it in some way, perhaps. When I feel immense distrust towards somebody, I'll also beat myself up about it and say, like, how dare I distrust this person? Like, we don't know that they're bad, and from their perspective, they're good, and so they must be good. And it's like, that is a really stupid way of looking at the world, because every person thinks that they're good on some level, and it doesn't mean they're good for you or anybody else. I'm sure the Nazis thought they were good, right? They earnestly probably did. That's how people work, but it doesn't mean that they're good for you or that they're good for the planet. And how soon we've forgotten such things. So I've talked about a lot, but I want to push just a little further here. Why is it that when I contemplate the fact that I am capable of aggression or evil, that I'm not all good, that I may not really even care about being a good person, that all my anxiety leaves me, that all my panic and terror is gone, and I actually feel grounded again? I actually feel better. That's not what's supposed to happen, right? We're supposed to try to find the good in us and lean into the good and be good little boys and girls. And when we do that, then we are absolved of sin, and then we are at peace because we're a good little lamb. But that is not how I feel, and that is not what has happened. Instead, I feel complete and whole and at peace when I just acknowledge that, yeah, I'm not whatever good is, whatever that is, being harmless, being super, uh, not even daring to take up space. I don't want that life. That's not me. I don't even agree with it. I don't care. It's pointless. And my real feelings about several things in my life aren't pretty. If other people looked at them, they might not like what they saw. One of those things that I have had to deal with recently is I I realized that I love some people more than others, and I love some animals more than I love some people. And some that really riles some people up. They're like, "How could you possibly feel that way about an animal compared to a human life?" And well, whether that's right or wrong, that is my real authentic feeling. There are definitely animals like my cat that I care about more than some people. You know, there's people I don't even know. How am I supposed to care about them? So it's really this push of what I'm supposed to think of as right and wrong versus what I actually do. And just acknowledging, look, this is what I actually feel. And I don't really participate in that right or wrong bullshit. I'm just me, and I'm going to fight for me and what I believe in. And I'm going to try to hear the other side out when it's safe to do so. I'm going to try to find solutions that meet both parties' needs. But if I can't and you come charging down my door, I'm going to light you up like a Christmas tree. And that's all there is to it. And saying that might sound overly aggressive or whatever, but it's just me. It's reality. And it feels a hell of a lot better than this fake bullshit of saying I need to be a good person all the time. I need to act like a good person always because I like when people see me as a good person. And so, what I want to figure out is why I have such intense panic about moral choices, and why acknowledging the fact that I'm not a good person makes it go away. Why might this be? I think this isn't the most satisfying sentence to me at explaining this, but it's a start. I think that part of it is that being harmless makes you very weak. Like, you have to be weak to be harmless. And so if you're saying that you are going to do no harm to others, you haven't even the capacity to do it. You neuter yourself of the capacity for harm. Well, then you're at the mercy of anybody who can hurt you. If you aren't willing to use force, you are at the mercy of everyone who can. And so, yeah, of course, I guess I feel absolutely terrified. This actually does make some sense to me. I don't know why it was so hard for me to see my panic as a reaction, as a result of me trying to be harmless. Because, of course, it's like, well, part of me is going to freak the fuck out because there's no one left to defend. There's no inner defenses. No one cares about his interests. No one cares about. It's not about doing the right thing, quote unquote. It's about doing the right thing for him. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody inside of myself. I'm speaking as though there are multiple selves inside of me. And I think that there are a lot of different aspects inside of all of us. So I think that is a good way to explain what is happening. That the panic is the result of the attempt to be harmless. And the reason that you want to be harmless, the reason that you want to seem nice and like a good person and not upset anybody and not look bad, not have anybody talk bad about you, the reason for all of these things is because you want to fit into a group. But when the group's too large, when that's everybody, it doesn't work. When you want to please and appease everyone by being something that you are not, you end up being miserable and at war with yourself. And the worst part of all, it's so weird, but the worst part of all for me was the loss of connection to my own self. It's something I find really hard to explain. And yet it is incredibly psychically painful to not feel connected to one's own self, to not feel like you are you. And that happens when you strip away your shadow, when you say, you're not part of me. I guess you grow your shadow. You grow the amount of things you don't want to look at about yourself, and you hide them from yourself. And you say, I'm a harmless, good boy who he just wants to be good. He's just a little puppy dog. That's all he is. He's just a good boy. And I'm not. Because even though I may appear domesticated, inside I'm still a wolf. Inside I still have the capacity to hurt you. And thank God I do. Because if I didn't, you would abuse me. That's just power dynamics and reality between individuals. And it doesn't have to be miserable and sad. It can be just the game of life, and you can appreciate it. But those are the facts. That if you can't fight back, you're going to get hurt. And so there was this desire to be harmless, to be a good boy, like a golden retriever, like we think of them as. And the motivation for that was so that I would not be excluded from any sort of group or ever looked down on, that nobody would dislike me. This goes all the way back to when I started going to therapy in college. Thankfully, it was free. Pretty cool. Get like 12 free sessions a year, I think. So I started going to therapy, and I love my therapist, bless her heart, but I didn't like one of the things that she did, which was that she would always say, like, that I'm a good person, that I didn't need to worry about things, and I'm a good person. And I know she was trying to give me reassurance. But the fact is, like, I'm not a good person, and I need to reassure myself that I'm good enough for myself. But one of the things that she did was really good, and unfortunately, it's taken forever to click with me. And my friends have told me the same thing for decades. My parents have even told me this. And it's that not everyone is going to like you. I'll say it one more time because it is really important. Not everybody is going to like you. And there are other variations on this, like you can't please everyone, so you might as well please yourself. Things like that. And that's basically what it is, except for I took it a notch farther. It's not necessarily just about people liking me, it's about me needing to find the right answer, me needing to be right, to do the right thing morally, as if that was some sort of objective thing that we could see out in the world, but it isn't. It's not there, it's not real. It is merely the illusion brought about by the struggle for power of myself, between my desire to be myself and my desire to vanish and become part of the group and no longer have a self. And that desire is there too. I mean, hell, there's even the desire towards death, thanatos. But that desire masqueraded logic and calculation, moral calculus, as if it existed. It posited that that was some sort of fact that I could figure out. And I knew it wasn't, and yet I just couldn't bring myself to shatter this illusion. It was only through a change of feeling, which was brought about by a decision to keep myself, to live for myself. I chose it. I didn't choose it because it was the right answer. I didn't, I felt it to be wrong, even. Everything inside me, well, all of my thoughts told me, don't do that, it's bad. But my gut, at the deepest level, told me, I'm going to choose this anyway. It's the right answer for me. And I have no doubt anymore that it is the right answer for me. And it's weird to let go of all of the notions of what right and wrong are, and to not beat myself up anymore, to not say that I need to do things differently, to not say that I'm a bad person, just to let all that go and to stick with my real feelings. It is, it's a really strange world, but it's a lot quieter and it's a lot nicer. And I find that there aren't that many problems and that I wasn't being any more virtuous before. I find that there are very few things I really feel guilty about. That most of my guilt was fear. It was fear masquerading as guilt. But that I didn't feel guilty about half the shit I did. I just wanted to look good. But it wasn't me. There are very few things I feel guilty about. But there are some. And they feel different. They're visceral. And they're things that happen maybe when I'm alone and nobody knows. But I just feel that, like, that was wrong. That's not something I want to do. That's not who I want to be. A great example is I'm alone at home with my cat. My cat's pissing me off, and I get way too mad at her, and I yell, like, really angrily. That's not something I want to do. Feeling shame and guilt about that was so strangely beautiful. It was like, this is appropriate. This is appropriate, damn it. This feels authentic. Whereas a lot of the other issues in my life, a lot of the things that I've done that, like, a lot of people would say are not good, I don't care. I don't give a damn about it, really. I don't give a fuck that I did that. Yeah, it wasn't the best, whatever it was, there's a lot of things, but I don't care so deeply about it. It was all me worrying about what other people thought of me. And I had no idea that it was so powerful that it could cause these visceral panic attacks. And when I would stray from the way, when I would do things that didn't feel authentic to myself, is when I would encounter panic. And things that aren't authentic to me are doing things for others and not myself, and putting their opinions above my own, and being around people and following their whims and their wills when they are not good for me. These are inauthentic actions. There's a more authentic part of ourselves. I'm sure you can say everything you do is authentic in some level. And yeah, sure it is. But it's also a quest to get back to the most authentic part of ourselves, to get back to the core of who we are. I thought that I was searching for the right answer. I thought I was searching for honor and righteousness and morality, and that if I only did that, I could get this panic to go away. Sort of like a primitive people believing that they had angered the gods by doing something that they didn't like, and that's why they had a tsunami or an earthquake. I'm the same way. I don't think that I really have transcended that. I feel like I'm still like that superstitious human being that's like, what have I done? What moral faux pas did I make to cause this to happen? But what I've realized is that I wasn't really searching for those things. I don't really care about being a good person, about looking good, about this is morality and I am moral. Um, I don't care about that. It's not what I'm after, and that's not what's going to make the panic go away. Doing things to make the panic go away, if you're doing it in that way, isn't really going to make it go away. Um, you need to do things just for yourself, of that energy, starting there and letting that go forward. It's not about how can I appease the panic monster. It's acknowledging that the panic is a result of something that you've done. It's a result of being somebody that you're not. A result of an attempt at self-denial, at becoming harmless, at thinking that you don't need claws and teeth, that you don't need the ability to react against somebody, that you don't need aggression. That's why you're feeling the way that you're feeling. And that's something I noticed as well, that, I don't want to get too weird here, but when I was panicking, I noticed that I felt no aggression. Whenever I panicked, there's no aggression at the same time. Almost never. It felt, and this is where it gets a little weird, because, like, I'm not trying to be sexist here. I know that women, have their own thing, but speaking as a man, it felt like all of the testosterone had left my body in those moments. I felt absolutely harmless, and that everything was out to get me and could get me. I felt that everything was a threat, and I could not deal with any of the threats. And that's an awful place to be. And it's not real either. It's self-imposed and it's not real. Like, the fact is, I can deal with threats. That's one of the things I really like about going to jujitsu is I realized like I'm naturally a good fighter. This is awesome. It's still scary every time. Even when I spar with somebody, there's still an element of fear, but I overcome that fear and I am forced into action and I act. And I find that my body does what it needs to do on its own when I wrestle and things like that. And in the same way, like I'm not going to let somebody, take what I love from me, take who I love from me. But I was going down a very dark path where I was headed in that direction, where I could have let darkness consume me and let all that I love and everyone I love be taken from me in some sense. Maybe not have their lives taken from me, but have their presence taken from me. Have it be where I remember feeling just like I could not get myself to prioritize the people that mattered to me. I could not prioritize my own cat's care, let alone myself. That was absolutely an afterthought. And it's not that I'm not selfish. It's that it's a maladaptive, roundabout, indirect way of trying to be selfish and get my own needs met by meeting the needs of certain people who held a lot of power over me. I felt like I had to meet the needs of those people to the detriment of all of the people that I cared about the most and myself. It felt like I needed to do that in order to live. So to really thoroughly answer this question, it's like, why do you want to be harmless? Is it just to be part of a group? Is that really it? And it's like, kind of. But it's more like it's a very specific group. It's a very specific group. It might even just be one person at a time in our lives. But we can really value that one person's opinion of us above all else. We might not even like that person. We might find that person disgusting and deplorable. We might want nothing to do with that person. And yet, we find ourselves incapable of opposing them. We find that we are completely at their mercy because they're the group that we care about. They're the entity that we believe we need to appease in order to protect our own existence. And that if they're happy with us, then we can be happy with us. If they're okay, then we're okay. And it's not figuring this stuff out that is ever really going to help somebody. It might be helpful, but the large bulk of what's going to be helpful is just waking up and deciding that you don't want to live for somebody else, that you don't want to live to appease some other entity that's not you, and that you're not going to be bullshitted and conned into a game of right and wrong and morality that don't exist. It's just another form of manipulation in the game of power that is life. And whether or not somebody acknowledges or accepts that they are using manipulation is irrelevant to whether they are actually using it. Because we're all doing it all the time. Surprise, you're doing it too to some extent. So we're all manipulating each other. We're all always engaged in the battle of life. And it doesn't have to be a terrible thing, because you'll meet a lot of people whose beliefs align with yours and mesh with yours for a long time, and you can value the same things and become allies. But you'll also meet people who just don't like you. You'll meet people who want to control you, whose goals are completely antithetical to your own. And they will try and manipulate you through force, through coercion, through guilt, through fear, all kinds of different ways, through obligation, to get you to do what they want. And if you fall prey to it, like I have numerous times, You'll begin doing what they want, and you'll believe that you're doing the world a service, that you're being a good person, that you're being righteous. But the whole time, all you're really doing is betraying yourself. There is no such thing as this morality that they claim and leverage against you. It's just a manipulation. That's truly all it is. Carl Jung has a quote that I'll also paraphrase that's basically him saying, life is a battleground. And where the battle cease, where the battleground to stop being, where life to stop being a battleground, however you want to say it, that life would cease to be. And we can see that that is true. At every level, there is conflict. And maybe we don't even need to call it conflict, because at a larger level, it is harmony. But at other levels, it does appear to be conflict. It's the secret sauce that makes life work. You know, Alan Watts talked about how when our white blood cells are fighting against pathogens, I hope I'm using the right terminology. I'm sure a biologist would say probably something else. But that happens. Something like that happens in our bodies. And when that's happening, that's conflict. At one level, that is conflict. And at a higher level, it's harmonious within us because it keeps us protected, it keeps us doing things. And if that conflict didn't happen, you would die because the virus or the bacteria or whatever it is would just come in and wreak havoc. You need to have this conflict for life to exist. And you might say, well, why not let the bacteria win? And it's like, okay, sure, let's let the bacteria win. It wins, you die, it takes over everything in your body, it takes over the trees, etc. If there were nothing to oppose this singular strain of bacteria, it would grow to the point where it perhaps couldn't sustain itself because there was no resource, no other thing left. And then it would die off. And then something else would invariably take its place. But it's through the struggle that we all exist. And it's through the struggle that we have beauty, that we have things we admire, that we have competition and sports and competency. That is the struggle of life. That it's necessary. It makes it beautiful. It's not always fun to look at the fact that this is underpinning all of our existence, but it is. There are so many things. I mean, everything, if you look at it hard enough, is to some degree a battle of energies, a battle of wills. And it's all beautiful. It's all part of life. At least you can see it as beautiful. And I recommend that you do, because the other option isn't very helpful. Maybe that's why we evolved to be able to experience beauty, is that what's the alternative to that? We don't experience beauty and pleasure in the world. We don't like the world. We don't like our lives. And I think that based on various factors of how I grew up, to prioritize harmlessness, and a lot of people in my generation, we're screwed a little bit. We're at a disadvantage when it comes to really negative things happening in the world, and we just don't even want to think about it because it's so heinous, it's so crazy, the world we live in. And there are unnecessary bad things happening, to be clear. I'm not saying that every single conflict that's happening is a good thing or that it should happen. But it's making us shy away from being the kind of people who can take action at a lower level to prevent a larger, grosser, more disturbing conflict. You know, people need to have a voice. They need to be active in doing things to prevent things like that, to prevent things like dictatorships and world wars. And you might say, well, there's no right and wrong, Heaver. Why are you saying we should prevent those things? Well, there's a right and wrong for us, you know? And you don't want those things, and you know you don't want those things. But yeah, not trying to see myself as a saint, understanding that I have the capacity for badness and evil and things like that. It's made all the difference in me feeling far less panicked, far less disturbed by things. I can handle it. I can handle life. I can understand that it is, to a large degree, a battle. And to retreat from the battle of life, to be so squeamish that you don't want to participate in it and you want to sit on the sidelines, is one of the worst possible fates that can happen. You're a coward and you die 1,000 times before you finally die. I also acknowledge that I am just in a state of mind right now. I am embodying who I am today, but that I will not be immune to this tomorrow. That again and again I will have to relearn and re implement this lesson. It's not a static thing. It's a thing I have to acknowledge over and over again. And if I'm lucky and if I'm smart, I'll acknowledge it for longer periods before I'm tricked out of it by myself or by others. And usually it's a conspiracy between a part of ourselves and a part of somebody else that results in us betraying ourselves and betraying our understanding that life involves conflict. And then we think, oh, I don't want to hurt anybody. And Alan Watts, I quote him so much, but he's also said that more wrong has been done in the name of good than actually just intending on doing wrong. People thinking they're being good, doing the right thing, have caused a disturbing amount of, things to, they've brought a disturbing amount of things to bear. They've brought them to bear. Is that how you say that? Anyway, I think I'm ready to listen to myself and to step out into the world and to be me and to acknowledge my real feelings, whatever they are, and not try to appeal to some definition of morality that was created by other people for the purpose of controlling me. Nietzsche talks about master and slave morality, and I think I have a big slave morality energy going on, and that people who don't have that are able to do things that I'm not able to do. But I'm going to trust in myself, in my own morality, in what I believe deep down to be right and wrong, and not what I think I should feel. To some people, if they listened to this and made it this far, to which, if you have, my sincerest gratitude, truly. Thanks for listening to my annoying voice for that long. But if you have made it this far, some of you might feel like, duh, what's he getting at? Some of you might think you kind of understand it, and it's like so implicit in reality that you don't understand how somebody could think otherwise. Um, and the answer is that I'm sort of sick. That's how I could think otherwise. Is that I have this intensely socialized morality that was beaten into me, this shame and this guilt that were entwined with the parts of my nature that wanted to please and conform and survive. It's all selfish. It's all about survival. I just put this wool over my eyes saying, no, no, it's not about that. I'm being good. I'm being righteous. I'm being a good person when I do these things, and other people aren't being good people. That's what it is. And I think it's a pretty human thing to think in this way. But it's why morality all really falls apart in the end. It's why it really is this group versus that group. It's this person's opinion versus that person's opinion. It's not objectivity, but we act as if there is objectivity, and at least in the language I speak, English, the way we talk about people and events and things is with a lot of ought and should and right and wrong. And so it's easy to conflate that with those as global variables as opposed to things that we just feel in the moment. Right or wrong, I choose to stay true to myself from now on. That's the path I'm going to walk.